creationists. Thing 2 of the giantess of feminism. Although the Bible is very clear that women are not to be in the offices of the church, churches are falling over, terrified of the giantess of feminism, and they allow women into the offices of the church. Not because the Bible is unclear, but simply because they're terrified of being called male chauvinists by the world. And probably the greatest giant of them all in today's modern society is the giant of militant homosexuality. The churches are terrified of this giant, and that is why they are changing their rules on membership in the church, allowing homosexuals to be members, allowing them even to be ministers in the church. Not because the Bible is unclear, but because they are terrified of that scream of the giant of homosexuality, homophobia. That is the state of the church today, as it was the state of Israel in the Old Testament. And so here we have Israel terrified of Goliath. The turning point in this history is the arrival of a young shepherd boy called David. The text tells us he gets up early in the morning. His father sends him to the battlefield with provision for his brothers, and he, as an obedient child of God, obeys his father and goes. He arrives there just in time to hear one of these morning tirades of scorn coming from Goliath. And that was no accident. God had a purpose in bringing David to the battlefield at that very moment, so he could hear what Goliath was saying. He was preparing salvation for his people, and he was preparing judgment and damnation for his enemies, the Philistines. When David arrived on the battlefield, he was shocked. He expected to see Israel fighting against the Philistines. He did not expect to come to a scene of cowardice and blasphemy, but that is exactly what he found. He heard the words of Goliath, the text tells us, and his heart was filled with righteous indignation against this blasphemer. But more perplexing to him was this: is there no one in all of Israel willing to stand up against this blasphemous Philistine? Is there no one willing to stand up and defend the honor of Jehovah God? Are they all going to remain terrified? And so he asks around the camp, what will be done to the one who kills this Philistine? And he hears that Saul has promised rich rewards, a princess for a wife, riches and freedom in Israel. But even with those promised rewards, no one is willing to fight against this Philistine. And when David discovers this, he, without any hesitation at all, he volunteers to be the champion on Israel's side. He says to Saul in verse 32, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine." So now we have the battle lines drawn. On the one side we have an 11-foot giant called Goliath. On the other hand we have a little boy, a little shepherd boy called David. Who will win this battle? What are the issues at stake in this battle? The issue is not this: who is the biggest or the strongest, or who has the most experience in military combat. Obviously, if that were the issue, David is going to lose. David has no experience whatsoever fighting in this kind of battle. David is young. David is weak. He has no match for Goliath at all. but his size is no problem to God. God is able to use him in his hand, despite the fact that David is of himself weak. But no one that day understood this. Goliath did not understand that. When he saw David, he laughed him to scorn and disdained him. Saul did not understand this either. Saul said, "Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." And Israel did not understand either. In verse 24, "And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid." And today too, the issue is not who is the strongest and who is the biggest. We have said the world is much larger and much stronger than the church. The issue is this: who is the captain of the church? The captain is Jesus Christ, and he is all-powerful, sitting at the right hand of God the Father, controlling all things for the good of his church. And nothing and no one can destroy the church of Jesus Christ. So that every member of the church is able, by the power of God's grace, to stand up against the giant of this world and the giant of the devil. Even young people can do this. Notice that David was a young person. He was equipped because of his father's instruction at home and because of the instruction he received in the public worship of God. He was equipped to fight against this Philistine. And we too, even the young people, because of their parents' instruction at home and because of the catechetical instruction of the church and what they hear in the public worship services on the Lord's Day, they are able, you are able, young people, to fight against the Goliaths of this world. Let no man therefore despise your youth. So that's not the issue. The issue is not size. The issue is not strength. The issue is, and David sees it immediately when he arrives, the issue is the covenant. David is zealous for the covenant because David loved the covenant God, Jehovah. The covenant is that beautiful bond of friendship which God, the triune God, Jehovah, makes with his people in Jesus Christ. And in the Old Testament, that covenant was signed and sealed in circumcision. David grew up in a covenant home. He was circumcised. He had godly parents. He was taught the truth in his home. And so from an early age he knew and he loved his God, the covenant God. And that is exactly the way the church should be and is when the church is faithful. The young people grew up in covenant homes, and even from their earliest days they love God in the covenant, and they believe on him, and they worship him, and they serve him. And that's what we have by God's grace here too. Our children are taught the truth by their parents and by the church. And in their earliest days, as little children, they show that they love Jesus Christ, that they have true faith. And they show by the way they live that they are Christians, members of God's covenant. And because David loved his covenant God, he views Goliath in a unique way. Notice what he says about Goliath when he first sees him. He calls him this uncircumcised Philistine. He does that in verse 26, and he repeats that in verse 36. He does not call him Goliath. He does not call him that big, frightening giant. He calls him this